What a blessing to be in the presence of so many inspiring leaders, leaders of change. And speaking especially of leaders of change, our next speaker was pivotal in bringing attention to the systemic failure of police to address child abuse allegations. Between 2015 to 2016, in her former role as National Manager of Prevention based at Police National Headquarters, she led a major change program in the family and sexual violence areas, and she recognised our vital links to whānau and played an instrumental part in supporting tūpono te manukahau o te whānau. And for that, we are truly grateful. So, without further ado, no Ngāti Porou, please welcome a finalist in the 2016 Westpac Women of Influence Awards and the first Māori female District Commander, Tusha Whene. Homai te whakataki.
Kia ora whānau. This is a little bit daunting because I actually thought I was speaking in the little room that I've been sitting in for 2 hours upstairs. And then I got brought down here. Can I ask one small favour, because I love this sense of whānau, and you're all like spread out. Can we just stand up and come in to the front? Is that okay? Think of it like getting your steps up. Oh, come on, don't be scared. Thank you. So, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Hakarangi te maunga, ko Anara Bay te awa, ko Ngāti Porou te iwi, Ngāti Porou in the house. Ko Tasha Penny toka wingawa, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. What a huge privilege it is for me to be here. I really mean that. Thank you so much. You might think I'm not in uniform, so I'm just going to make a disclosure on that. I notice don't film me. I'm so not politically correct. I'm going to make an admission about why I'm not in uniform. It's because when I put my pants on last week, suddenly someone had sewed them up a little bit. And I'm at that age and stage, to be honest, that your pants don't fit, and I have to say, are you hot? You know, is it hot in here? Is it age and stage? And the woman in the room, no. And what the new 50 is the new 30, I've decided. When I was asked to do this keynote, I said, tell me what you want me to talk about. And I love Helen Leahy so much. She is one formidable wahine toa, and I couldn't respect her any more than I do, Helen. You are incredible. But I get this note back saying, talk about your personal journey, talk about racism, talk about whānau ora, talk about te pai oranga in 20 minutes. So this is going to be one heck of a ride. So look, I stand here before you and I thought, what do I call this? Do I call it being tolerated? Because you know that saying about only go where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated. Well, if that was how we actually lived our life, I don't know many places that would open the door, to be honest with you. So I thought, do I call it something inspirational, like, being tolerated? And then I thought, that's not that inspirational, right? Although it's a little bit the story of my life, to be honest. Do I call it privilege? And I've decided on that. The privilege of leadership. So I probably want to start right at the beginning. So I am very proud Ngāti Porouan from Gisborne, and that was my first privilege, growing up in Gisborne, in a biracial whānau, and that was interesting in itself. So part of me I've always felt is missing, and I find that peace when I go in Waitemata to Huane Waititi Marae, when I come to conferences like this, when I go back with our people. You feel this amazing sense of belonging. And that's why I would fly across the world to attend conferences like this, to be here with you. So I want to thank you. But Gisborne, you know, people say, what do you mean by privilege? 51% Māori, a lot of unemployment, so many issues. And I say, growing up in Gisborne actually made me the woman I am that stands on this stage today. I grew up in an environment where I learnt not to judge. I grew up in an environment where I learned that actually not everyone's born equal. And I learned to grow up in an environment which actually taught you that if you have a voice, then use it for people who sometimes don't. And use it to make a difference, and use it to shine the light, and use it to be brave and don't be scared, and use it to be part of a community. So when I was growing up, again, I grew up, some of my best friends, some joined the gangs, others were victims of family harm. You go on a bit of a journey in relation to that. So when I got to the age of 21, I thought about, what do I do? I was actually a trainee journalist, to be honest, at the Gisborne Herald, and we were breaking some stories, can I tell you? You laugh. Cyclone bowler. I risked my life in gumboots, walking around farms trying to find that story, people. And then I thought, you know what? I'd sit in court and I'd watch these people give evidence and protect people, and it was policing. And that was my second privilege, going into the New Zealand Police. And look, I know some people think, oh, whatever. But trust me, I'm really not the propaganda queen. Policing is the ultimate privilege. 20,000 New Zealanders, women, children, grandparents, ring us every week on 111 asking for help. And that looks like a whole lot of different things. It looks like a woman sitting in her house who's widowed after 55 years by herself and hears something outside and is scared. It looks like a 6-year-old coming home from a neighbour's and saying that something really bad has happened to them. It looks like someone walking on the worst day of their life, and they ring 111 and they ask us to come through their doors, and that is a privilege. So there's some things that have really shaped me in my policing career, and without a doubt my passion is around victimisation, is around working with Māori and community, and around trying to make a difference. And there's a couple of things I just want to share with you. So one of my very first sexual violence cases was working on what has been called the Beast of Blenheim. Has everyone heard of the Beast of Blenheim case? Hands up, yeah. So you know what, I was really young, I was 22, 23. Very first case, I went down, I was told I was going down for 2 weeks. It ended up to be months and months and months. But it taught me this, without getting into a long tale, it taught me this, that how is it that women and children disclose things that have happened to them and yet a system can ignore them? How can it happen when a couple of decades later, when we're pulling up files, that if we'd only done something at that time, we could have saved a whole lot of harm? And ironically, my why now is still my why 30 years ago. So I'm coming up to my 30-year anniversary in the New Zealand Police. To which you're all meant to go, really? None of you did. I've just taken it back. I wouldn't fly across the world to be with you. Okay. 10 years ago, if I said, I'm going to say this, okay, is this better? I'm coming up to my 50-year anniversary in the police. But my why now is crazily enough and sadly enough, my why in my first 18 months. So, I have sat and held women's hands, literally as they've taken their last breath. When the people who are meant to love them the most have done so much harm that they take their lives and they leave a whānau without a mother and a sister and an auntie. And the thing that I really reflect on, and I tell you now, I can shut my eyes and I can put myself back in those environments like it was yesterday. But why it's my why is this, because so many people knew. So many people knew that things weren't right. And that's probably putting it nicely. So many people knew that these predominantly women were at risk. That there was a risk that these kids were going to grow up without their mother, and let's be honest, they then start growing up without their father. And so how does this happen? in an Aotearoa where we actually raise more money in a telethon per head per capita, in an environment where we care, how can it be that so many people know and we still keep burying our own? And unfortunately now, if I look back at recent cases of children living amongst the plague of methamphetamine, about us knowing risk, us as a community, us as government agencies knowing risk, and that still keeps happening. That's why it's my why we still have work to do. But then you know what? The crazy thing is this. I keep going and I keep believing because I've seen magic. And I have no doubt with all the experience in the room and looking at you all that so have you. And magic sort of looks like this, and this is why I love it down here, you need to know. Because when we came up with this crazy notion of doing something different with family harm, and from police we've looked at different concepts and ways of working, whether it be whangaina pāharakiki and bringing in kaiawhinas, or ISR, when it's the first time I really had the privilege of working with Mark Solomon and Helen, and saying actually we need to do things differently. And can I tell you, I remember people challenging on that and saying, you've got to be really careful doing things differently because people are dying. And I said, that's the very reason why we need to do something differently. And without getting into crazy notion, do you know what all of that stuff looked like? It actually looked like the whole principles of whānau ora, of actually realising that we need to treat people as a whānau, that actually saints and sinners is something actually probably in a lot of movies, that actually you can't deal with one member of a whānau and isolate them, that we've got to work together. And actually what we know makes a difference when we're dealing with Māori families is kaupapa Māori services that come in and work, and we get the best results from them. So we did this thing called ISR that's still going in Christchurch and Waikato, and I can't tell you how important it was to have iwi at the table making decisions there in kaupapa Māori services. And when I talk about this thing called magic, I want to talk about this girl called Ariana. And Mark Solomon's just walked in, and here's one of the people that I absolutely love, and we stand on the shoulders of you, my friend, that you are incredible and such a leader for Aotearoa. But I remember this young woman called Ariana, and we had to say, is this working? And there's widgets, right? You have widgets and you have to say, why is this working? Why is doing something different? Why is making sure that every government agency's at the table and sharing the information? And I thought, how do you actually, in the early stages, how do you sort of sell this, right? And then came Ariana, and she stood up in front of ministers and CEOs, and she brought a bag with her, and she sort of dropped the bag. And Ariana, beautiful in her 20s, would fit her police pants, can I tell you? And she said this, and she was so nervous because she said, and this is crazy, right? She said, I'm a little bit intimidated going into this room because there's such important people in there. And that's the first thing that we get wrong, right? That people think they're not important. I say to my kids, if I die tomorrow, remember two things. One is that I love you more than life itself, right? And for those of us who have the privilege of being parents, isn't it so like that you cut your own heart out, put arms and legs on it and watch it walk around, but then it drains your entire bank account and you're reliant on them for your retirement? As my son says to me, Mum, I love you so much, when I stick you in a rest home, I'm going to make sure it doesn't smell of urine. Don't laugh, my friends, that is why my daughter gets everything. But anyway, she stood there, and I can see her now, and Ariana stood there and she said, she told her story, and our stories are so powerful, right? And she told the story about growing up, and the crazy thing is, the police database, we didn't have very much on Ariana, but when we looked through other government agencies, it told her whole story, and that's why we have all this thing called data on people, but it's a life story we need to pull together to help. And she said, I grew up, and all I saw was violence. And I had different boyfriends, and they were violent to me, and I sort of thought, that was my lot. And I have 2 tāne, and I love the man I'm with, but she said, I want to show you a photo. And she passed this photo of her, and you need to know she is beautiful. She passed this photo of her around, and you saw this, people gasping. Because Ariana didn't look like Ariana. She had her nose over here. She had teeth missing. And she said, this is what happened to me one night in August. And I remember the fight happening. I remember being hit, I remember falling to the ground, and then I don't remember much. I remember coming to, and I remember my tāne looking for my teeth to put them back in. And she said, and I rang the police, and I don't usually do that. Next thing I wake up in hospital, and she said, I don't know what happened, but something was different. Something was different this time. Something was different in the hospital. Something was different when police dealt with me. Something was different. And when you ask me what does magic look like, it looks like this. She said the most powerful comment I have ever heard. She said this. She said, you know, it had got to the point that in these bags are just pieces of paper from every agency in town that they've given me. But the only piece of paper I actually wanted was money to pay for my tangi because we can't afford it. And I thought that's just going to happen. It's getting so violent that I think I'm going to die. And she said, but 2 days after this happened, this word came into my head that I thought I'd lost. And that word was hope. And you know, it's crazy what my version of magic is. But when we can give people this word of hope back in their head when they haven't got it, then that's worth fighting for. And that's the sort of call for action that we need. And you know, that is the crazy thing for me, because I literally have been at the hospital and sat with women, and can I just get you to do this, those who are parents. So we're all at the age and stage, right? We're okay, we might have to have different sizes in our wardrobe, but more importantly, we've watched people we love die. So can I ask you to think about that of people you know, particularly I've lost a couple of friends who are young parents, and you know what? I have seen them fight to live so much. They have fought and they've said, look, we're all terminal, right? We're all terminal, but now is not the hour because I need to stay here for my children. And I have then had to reconcile hearing women say to me, I just wanted it to be over. I just want it to be over. So I suppose there's this thing called empathy. We don't know until we walk in those shoes. But what we do know is we can have a voice and we can make things better. And what I know personally is actually, in relation to a lot of these issues, we need to work with community and we need to listen. And the craziest thing was going to Tonga. I had the privilege of going to Tonga around family harm. And you know what? This is, I don't want to use the word arrogance, but you know, we go into communities because we're going to pave the way and help people. And do you know what that taught me above everything? That the way to work with community is you go in and you listen. And actually no one knows the community other than the community members that are in it. And actually part of the way you can work as government agencies is to listen to clear the way. And sometimes you can stand in front and sometimes you stand beside, but actually the community dictates when that happens. So in relation to policing, can I just cover one other thing about the privilege of policing? I talked about how many people ring us in an emergency, but it is true, my friends, that police are no different to any of you. They really aren't. They are the sons and daughters of Aotearoa. They are the mums and dads, and they're the aunts and uncles. And something that's really perturbed me lately is I don't know when we crossed a line in the community that actually the guardians of our community can get shot at or can get harmed, and that we don't rage against that. I really do. That is one of those other things that I just am really perplexed about at the moment. So some of the things that I need to tell you that is happening, Te Pai Oranga, which some of you I'm sure have heard. There's some really exciting things happening in police at the moment. And please feel free later to come up to me and have a chat. But there are some really exciting things happening in police at the moment. And you know what? It starts with Commissioner Andy Costa. So it's funny, you know, I don't know about you guys, but I'm probably not as young and edgy. My kids tell me I'm embarrassing and I'm not up with the vogue. So you know what? When I heard that the Commissioner, and you need to know I'm totally apolitical and I mean that, when I heard that the Commissioner was woke, I actually thought that was a good human being. That's actually what I thought the definition was. And the reason I say that is because I actually know him. Please know that I'm not standing up here. I'm not the propaganda kid as those who know me are. In fact, I'm quite the opposite of that, which is why I'm tolerated and not celebrated. But when I heard that he was being called woke, I was like, okay, definition, great human, guy who says, I want to bring your whole self to work. I want you to bring your ethnicity. I want you to bring your experience. I want you to bring your opinion. That's a new one. I want you to bring all of that and just be you. Don't run from it, don't hide from it, but I also want you to be a great human and care about other people. And actually, you know what? We want to work with iwi in a really authentic, genuine way. And we need to listen. And our partnering needs to be challenged about how we partner. Because meeting with people and being at the table and telling people things isn't consultation. And it isn't co-design. And it isn't any of that. And actually, if we want to make a difference, we've got to be different. We've got to be different. And so when I heard that that wasn't the definition of woke, I realised how uncool I was. Te Pai Oranga, which some of you know. Hands up who's heard of Te Pai Oranga. So iwi justice panels, which we've put a lot around the country. Again, you know, in relation to a whānau ora or iwi capacity, that's going way back, right? That's saying actually put people in front of us with their whānau. So if someone does something wrong, put them on the marae. Have them talk to kaumātua. Have a whānau approach. Because the one thing I know after 30 years is this. I have dealt with probably thousands of people in trouble. And some of those people I've arrested. I have dealt with 2 people who I think are genuinely really, really bad and lack any form of redemption. I have dealt with hundreds of people who have their darkest day and we get involved. And I challenge anyone. I want you to think of the dumbest decision you've ever made in your life. I want you to think of your own personal worst days. And then I want you to think if it's okay if everyone in the room judges you just on that. And probably the answer is no, right? Probably the answer is no. So what we're looking at the moment is trying to broaden Te Pai Oranga and having more offences that people can go there for, and actually looking around family harm, because the solution lies in the community, and the solution lies in marae, and the solution lies in kaumātua, and we need to listen and be a partner to that. So why I'm saying that to you is the future's looking pretty bright. So just in closing, before I take some questions, because the one thing I know is when I was sitting upstairs and I was listening to some amazing Ngāti Porou women talk, I knew that the agenda was going to be blown out, right? Because they say something about Ngāti Porou, right? We all know that. They say that listen to you all like, yeah, they do, Like, yeah. Well, guess what? What do they say, my friend over there? Tell us. What do they say? Oh, and where are you from, my friend? Oh. Well, I'll have to admit they do say Ngāti Porou are enamoured with the sound of our own voices. But that's because they sound so sweet. So look, just in closing, I'd just like to say a couple of things, and that is, if you think you're too little to make a difference, you've never shared a bed with a mosquito. That's the first thing. We have so much going on in this country, right? And at the moment, I've felt really sad for a couple of days. I felt really sad about Minister Kiri Tapu Allen. I know Kiri, I know her whānau. Well, what a wahine toa she is. You know, incredible. And if we look at the fight, she calls it the fight of her life that she's going through, and I know that we would wish Kiri sent her so much love and strength, right, to go what she's going through. I look at that, I look at our family harm statistics. And I hate even using that word statistics, right? It's like when we look at files, when we talk about child abuse. You know, and if we talk about child abuse and the work we've got to do, which is why I love the work that Mark Solomon and Helen Leahy and all our amazing leaders, and I think of Peter Sharples up at Huane Waititi, and there's so many leaders across the country who for decades have focused on making things better for our children and our whānau. You know, and if I think in closing just about courage and standing together, and actually sometimes when you shine a light, what we know is people get attacked and get tolerated. But I remember I remember when I chose to stand up around child abuse over a decade ago, when we knew that there was a lot of files of children being abused, and it's in the media, you know, that we admitted that we had systemic failure. And just sometimes we need to speak up and have that voice to make a difference, and actually not worry about ourselves, not worry that people contact us and challenge us on these things, and just trying to do what's right all the time. And just in closing, I'd just like to say that through iwi and through community and through Māoridom, to be honest, you know, I go back to where I started. I know a lot of people who I've spoken to when they try and change a system or shine a light, and they talk about being tolerated. And you know, sometimes we have to be tolerated if we need to drive for change. But during that, there is something in the collective. So we know this. Our strength is never as an individual, ever. It is always as a collective. And right now in Aotearoa, we still have the same challenges that we had 30 years ago when I joined, and probably 60 years ago with the generation before us who is striving to make change. But now is that hour. Definitely from a policing perspective, there is change. We have moved iwi and communities and family harm under Deputy Commissioner Wally Homaha. That is the first time we have moved a structure under iwi and communities, knowing how important that voice is. So can I just thank you all for the work you're doing down here and across the country. Can I urge you, if you need to get hold of me to have this kōrero and continue it? Can I ask you to invite us to the table? Can I make a promise to you that we will partner and listen to you? And can I just have that call for action? We have so much work to do, and the harsh, cold reality is this. We will have work to do until we stop burying the children and the women across Aotearoa who are killed in their own homes or part of that violence. And that is worth being tolerated for, and that is worth the fight. Kia ora, thank you.